Hi everyone, my name is Greg Rapp, and I design, develop, write, and publish tabletop role-playing games under my pen name G. Michael Rapp and my small press here in New Mexico called Free Radicals Press. I started making games about 2 years ago, but I've been playing tabletop role-playing games for about 15 years when I was introduced to them in Dulce, New Mexico by this awesome game master, David Howe. So today I'm going to talk about tabletop role-playing games as if you've never played them before, so bear with me. If you've never played a role playing game, you might be wondering what the heck is role playing and how does it deal with dice, playing at a tabletop with groups of people, and so on. Well, role playing games at their heart are about playing a role, acting out and playing as a particular persona in a game universe, such as in Dungeons and Dragons, you might play a paladin who is looking for maybe redemption, right, in this very gritty setting that you have for your Dungeons and Dragons game. Others might be, if you're playing Mothership, you might be a teamster who's trying to survive, getting from place to place in this very gritty universe. Or it could be something as funny as a bear trying to steal honey in very unique ways. And I believe that was Honey Heist. That was one of the games I was referencing just a second ago. But anyways, the idea is playing a role, right? You don't have to play it with funny voices or anything like that, but you're acting in the best interest of this persona. And more importantly, when people interact with you in game, most of the time it's because they're interacting with you to interact with this persona you've taken on. Many legacy tabletop role playing games tend to overemphasize combat, and you'll see this in traditional Dungeons and Dragons, even modern Dungeons and Dragons, although it's pushing away from that. And so I would like to emphasize here is that there are really four major pillars, and there are, of course, more than this, and every table is going to be different, and every game is going to have a different experience, but there's usually four pillars: combat, interaction, exploration, and achievement. So combat is what we normally assume from role-playing games, that you're fighting dragons and goblins or alien creatures on some remote planet or what have you, right? Combat is often considered the smallest and deadliest pillar of traditional role-playing. And why I say it's the deadliest is often in many games, not in all games, 5e, that is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, this isn't always the case. Combat is super deadly. In other words, if you get involved in combat, most likely if you fail, you die. Your character dies, and you have to start a new character all over again. Fifth edition's a little different than that, and various other games have kind of explored the alternatives to player character death. One example is, I believe it's Kids on Bikes, where you're playing children in kind of like a 1980s style horror, very similar to Stranger Things. And your character doesn't necessarily die, but they do suffer trauma. Interaction is the second pillar, and that is for those who like to socialize. You're interacting with in-game elements, you're interacting with NPCs, that's non-player characters, books, scrolls, maps, and so on. In other words, you're interacting with the world itself. A third pillar, and probably the most important pillar that's seen in a lot of role-playing games, especially tabletop role-playing games, is the emphasis on exploring the worlds or universes in which the game exists, right? Exploration extends a player's knowledge. It opens them up to new adventures and treasures and opportunities and so on and so forth, right? And then, of course, the last is achievement. This is the fourth pillar. It emphasizes the need to achieve something great, something bigger than the character, something that really changes them. Maybe it's stealing a prized gem from a mad bureaucrat, or crafting the ultimate weapon for a client, or looting a lost alien temple full of booby traps and cryptic texts. Whatever it may be, this is a very important aspect of role playing outside of combat and the traditional interaction. So again, four pillars of role playing games at the tabletop: combat, which is usually the deadliest, and probably the one you want to avoid the most. Interaction you do all the time. You interact with other players and their personas. You interact with non-player characters, that's NPCs, that are being played by, say, a referee or a game master or a dungeon master, and so on. Exploration, of course, is exploring that world or universe that you all inhabit as players. And of course, achievement is doing something that's pretty awesome, right? And that's what we want. For this last segment, I would like to talk about the referee, the game master, the dungeon master, whatever their role may be titled. They play a very important role in a lot of tabletop role playing games. Although there are some solo role playing games that are played by the individual, where they're playing a character or a city or any number of things, and they play as the role playing game's player, like a player character, but also as the referee or game master or dungeon master. And then there's also co-op games where the role of dungeon master, game master, referee, whomever, whatever, um, is shared by players, right? And two or more players share that role of running the game while also playing as player characters. And then there are GM-less, that is game masterless, role playing games that basically the dice, cards, or way the game is set up allow for this role to disappear completely and really just put it onto the players to play. So in traditional role playing games, you'll see the dungeon master, the game master, the referee, whatever they're called, and they are seen as kind of the controlling player, right? And that's a misnomer. The reason being is that a referee or a game master or dungeon master is a player themselves. They are playing to see what happens. They are throwing out challenges. They are throwing out certain hooks and plots and so on and so forth that help continue the game, that help create a story at the table. Now, traditionally, this isn't always the case. Older versions of Dungeons and Dragons, the dungeon master is a little bit more in control than we see in more modern games, but nevertheless, this player has an important role, just like the player characters. They are conflict instigators. They are there to cause mayhem. They're there to make the players be on their toes and try to figure out, how do we get past this obstacle? How do we defeat this challenge, which may be an NPC or a special monster or any number of things. And so this is a part of role playing games that's often hard to deal with, because if you're a new player, who plays the game master? Who plays the dungeon master? And I would say it'd be the individual who's most comfortable doing so, but also maybe in the beginning, share the role amongst the team. And you might find you like that better than having one person control it all. And again, going back to this idea of control, a game master, a dungeon master, referee is not God. They're human beings just like you, and they're players as well. They want to enjoy the game just as much as you guys do, who are players playing these personas in this shared world or universe. So keep that in mind going forward.